Hey guys, how you going? Hope you're all doing very well. This afternoon I'm going to be doing a review of a post-apocalyptic film from the United States of America, English language, released in the year 2011, directed by Doug Aniakowski, and this movie is called The Day. And the story to the day is as follows. A group of 5 survivors armed with shotguns, axes and machetes wander the back roads of a dismantled landscape looking for refuge in the day, a terrifying look into a post-apocalyptic future. As war ravages humanity, destroying civilization and most of life on Earth, the survivors realize they must do whatever it takes to stay alive. Lost, starving and exhausted, they seek shelter in a seemingly safe abandoned farmhouse. However, while searching for food and other resources, they unwittingly set off a trap, signaling to their ruthless predators lying in wait to begin their deadly attack. With food and ammunition dwindling, the group must make a desperate final stand over a 24-hour period, battling for their ultimate survival. So the movie is set in a post-apocalyptic world. It's not really clear as to how the world became the way it is, but this is what has actually happened. 5 main characters, they're all survivors, they're strangers, but they've banded together. They're looking for food and shelter, they're exhausted, and one of them is getting sick. So they come across this farmhouse, and they think it's an abandoned farmhouse, but it's anything but abandoned. What the farmhouse actually is a trap. Now, these 5 characters don't realise that they're being watched by some savages who are hungry and who use human beings as food. Basically, these savages are cannibals. So they go into the farmhouse and they seek shelter there, and while they're looking for food, they set off an alarm. Now, this alarm signals to the savages lying in wait that the prey has taken the bait and that they're going to launch an assault on the farmhouse in order to get what they feel is a meal. So when the 5 characters, the 5 main characters, when they realise the predicament they're in, they arm themselves and they basically try and fight off the onslaught of these dangerous people who are attacking them. So whether or not these 5 characters survive this ordeal, that's something you're going to have to find out for yourself, because that's as far as I'm going with my synopsis. Now, my thoughts on the film. I actually really like the idea of this movie, and it really paid homage to a lot of other films. Now, I don't know if it was deliberate, but, it actually was very apparent to me. Now, movies I'm talking about, Zulu, Dog Soldiers, and quite a few other films of the same sort of idea about courage and how you defy the odds, and that when put into a desperate situation, humanity is capable of very good things. So this is the same sort of film where you've got them stuck in a farmhouse, they're completely outnumbered, but they're not going to give up, and the power and the will to survive can outweigh basically anything. So that idea to the film was good, and that's what really drew me into it. Unfortunately, this film, it doesn't deliver as far as power is concerned, and that's something that disappointed me the most. But fortunately, there are enough positives to make it, avoid it to be, a complete disaster. Cinematography is very good, and I actually felt that the way the film was shot brought a whole new meaning to the movie. Now, there is hardly any colour in the film, and it really reminded me of The Road. The Road had a very depressing feeling, and this is exactly the same. It's kind of like a black and white film, but not quite. It just feels like the life of the whole world had been sucked out. And you as a viewer were really going along with it, because it was very grey, very dark, and you could kind of feel the desperate situation that these characters were going through. So it's a very downbeat, dreary feeling that won't really make you feel good, and it kind of makes you feel like there is no hope. But as the movie progresses, there is a little bit more colour that's put into it. So you kind of feel that there is hope at the end of there is light at the end of the tunnel. And as the movie progresses, it just keeps on getting a little bit more lighter. And as I said, it kind of feels like there's a little bit more light going into it. So cinematography was very good. Soundtrack really helped it as well. Very downbeat soundtrack, really reminded me of 28 Days Later. The acting was decent, although they didn't really have too much to play on. Dominic Monaghan plays one of the characters. He's a pretty well-known actor. And Michael Eklund, who was the bad guy off The Divide. I really like him. He was the villain, didn't really have too much to do, but when he was on screen, he demanded attention. So yeah, acting was decent as well. Unfortunately for me, this film felt more of paying homages to other films than being a film in itself. Now, as I said, it reminded me from the soundtrack of 28 Days Later. It reminded me from the cinematography of The Road. As the movie goes on, you just keep feeling that the movie takes ideas, paying homage to other films, but as a film itself, it really does seem shallow. It just feels like there is absolutely nothing to it. Now, the idea being from Zulu, Dog Soldiers, as I said, soundtrack being 28 Days Later, the feeling of the film being The Road. As I said, all of these other films that will remind you of it, but you get the impression that the movie was made to pay homage to other films rather than have the confidence to be a film in itself, because under the surface, as far as visuals are concerned, it is a very, very, very shallow film. The characters aren't going into in any depth at all, so the fact that the movie centers on courage and, you know, the inspiration of the human spirit, because you don't feel anything for the characters, it doesn't really portray that message so well. I thought, you know, very, very bland, very cardboard cutout. If you see one character, you've basically seen another. They've got the stereotypical sort of badass woman who is an expert at killing, and she kind of defies the odds in a very unrealistic way, which I really hated. And it feels like a WWE picture. Now, WWE distributed this film, and it's exactly what it feels like, entertainment rather than something that is going to really be thought-provoking, which is actually what I thought it would be. Now, as an action film, it does an okay job, but unfortunately, the CGI really ruins a lot of the brutality. I was pretty psyched to see that it had blood and gore. I like a good post-apocalyptic film with a bit of blood and gore, but it's done very, very lazily. Now, it is a fairly high-budget film, I would assume, but the CGI sort of violence took it out for me. The realism was completely thrown out, and it really felt like, as I said, a video game. Something that you would expect from WWE, and the reservations and the skepticism I had about the fact that WWE picked up this film was realised, because it just had absolutely no substance. It was all style over substance. You know, fortunately, the style does maintain some sort of redeemable level, but unfortunately, as a whole, underneath the surface, as I said, incredibly shallow, and you really don't care what happens to these people, and there's really nothing to the story. Basically, at the start, you get, you know, people wandering around. You don't know how the world came to the way it was, which is not necessary, but for this film, it would have been, you know, a good inclusion. Then it's basically, yeah, just them wandering around. They go into the farmhouse, they fight off their attackers, that's it. And so, yeah, for that, I just felt shortchanged because, yeah, as I said, very, very shallow film. It has nothing to it under the actual visuals, so it came as a massive disappointment for me. So basically, to sum it all up, it's taking ideas, it's paying homage to other films, but as a film itself, it's kind of forgetting what it's there for, and so as a result, it's more just an action film, and a pretty ordinary, forgettable action film at that, rather than something that it could have been. And what it could have been is a very inspirational sort of tale about defying odds. So that's my review of the day. I'm only going to give it 1.5 stars for the simple fact that visually it is good and the idea of it is okay, but unfortunately none of the potential that this film had was ever realised. So 1.5 stars for the American post-apocalyptic film The Day. Alright guys, that's my review. I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, keep watching movies and I'll see you later. Bye.